Have you ever noticed that some people are always online, but almost never post anything? They see everything. They know what is happening. They scroll, observe, read, understand, but they rarely show themselves. No selfies, no updates, no emotional captions. No need to prove where they are, who they are with, or how happy their life is. And at first, it seems simple to explain. Maybe they are shy. Maybe they are introverted. Maybe they just do not like social media. But what if there is something much deeper behind that silence? What if the people who never post are not disconnected from life, but more connected to it than most people realize? Because in a world where almost everyone is trying to be seen, staying invisible can become one of the strongest statements a person can make. We live in an age where life is constantly turned into content. A beautiful meal is not just eaten, it is photographed. A trip is not just experienced, it is documented. A relationship is not just lived, it is displayed. Even sadness, success, healing, heartbreak, loneliness, and happiness are often transformed into posts, stories, captions, and reactions. And slowly, without noticing, people begin to confuse living with showing. They begin to ask themselves, will this look good online? Will people react to this? Will this make me seem successful, attractive, interesting, loved? But the person who does not post often steps outside of this invisible game. Not because they have nothing to show. Sometimes they have a lot. They have deep thoughts, intense emotions, private victories, painful memories, beautiful moments, and stories that would surprise people. But they choose not to turn everything into performance. And that choice says a lot. Because silence online is not always emptiness. Sometimes silence is protection. Sometimes silence is maturity. Sometimes silence is a quiet form of power. It becomes open to opinions, open to judgment, open to misunderstanding, open to comparison. A simple moment can become a public object. A relationship can become something people analyze. A success can become something people envy. A mistake can become something people remember. A feeling can become something people misinterpret. So they keep certain parts of themselves untouched. Not because they are hiding, but because they know some things are too personal to be placed in front of an audience. And maybe that is one of the biggest differences between people who post everything and people who rarely post. Some people use social media to confirm who they are. Others already know who they are and do not need the confirmation. This does not mean they are better. It does not mean they are colder. It does not mean they do not care. It simply means their sense of self may not depend as much on digital applause. Because every time someone posts, there's often a silent question hidden behind it. Do you see me? Do you like me? Do I matter? Am I enough? And when the likes come, the brain receives a small reward. A little hit of validation. A little signal that says, you were noticed. But over time, that can become addictive. Not always an obvious way. People may not realize they are chasing validation. They may simply feel a subtle emptiness when nobody reacts. They may start wondering why a post did not perform well, why someone did not comment, why fewer people watched their story, why others seemed to get more attention. And suddenly, something that was supposed to be fun becomes emotional pressure. This is where the person who does not post becomes interesting. They may have learned to avoid that cycle. They may have realized that the moment they stop seeking approval from strangers, they start hearing themselves again. They stop living through the imagined eyes of other people. They stop asking, how will this look? And begin asking, how does this feel? That shift is powerful. Because when you do not need to post something to prove it happened, you start experiencing life in a more direct way. You laugh without thinking of recording it. You travel without worrying about the perfect angle. You feel proud without needing public applause. You suffer without turning pain into a performance. You grow without announcing every step. And that kind of private growth is often the deepest kind, because the things that truly change us rarely happen in front of an audience. Healing is usually quiet. Self-respect is quiet. Letting go is quiet. Becoming stronger after pain is quiet. Learning to love yourself again is quiet. The internet may reward loud transformation, But real transformation often happens in silence. And the people who do not post may understand this better than anyone. They know that not every chapter of life needs witnesses. Some chapters need protection. Some chapters need patience. Some chapters need silence until they make sense. But there is another side to this. Not everyone who avoids posting is doing it from peace. Some people do not post because they are afraid. Afraid of being judged. Afraid of being misunderstood. Afraid of not being attractive enough. Afraid of not being interesting enough. Afraid that if they show themselves, people will not respond. And that silence can come from pain. Social media can create something very subtle. The feeling that you're always being watched, even when nobody is actually looking. You start editing yourself before you speak. You start judging your own face before anyone else can. You start deleting photos before posting them. You start rewriting captions again and again. And eventually, posting becomes exhausting. So, some people retreat, not because they do not want connection, but because visibility feels dangerous. They want to be seen, but not superficially. They want to be known, but not judged. They want connection, but not exposure. And that is a very human contradiction, because deep down, most people want to be understood, but not everyone wants to be displayed. There's a difference. To be displayed is to become an image. To be understood is to be met as a person. And people who rarely post often crave the second one. They may not care about being admired by many. They may care about being truly known by a few. That is why some of the quietest people online are often the most emotionally rich in real life. They may not post their thoughts every day, but when they speak, they say something meaningful. They may not show their life online, but when you sit with them, you realize they have been living deeply. They notice details. They observe patterns. They listen carefully. They remember things other people forget. Because instead of constantly projecting themselves outward, they're absorbing the world inward. And that creates a different kind of intelligence. A quiet intelligence. The kind that does not need to announce itself. These people often understand human behavior very well because they spend more time watching than performing. They notice who changes when they are around different people. They notice who posts happiness but speaks from emptiness. They notice who wants attention, who wants control, who wants validation, and who is silently struggling. They see the gap between the life people show and the life people actually live. And once you see that gap clearly, it becomes harder to participate in the illusion because you realize that social media is not always a window into reality. Often it is a stage, and on that stage, people show the edited version of themselves. The version that looks more confident, more successful, more loved, more desirable, more certain. But nobody's life is as clean as their feed. Nobody's mind is as organized as their captions. Nobody's happiness is as constant as their photos suggest. And when someone understands this, they may lose interest in playing the same game. They may still scroll. They may still enjoy content. They may still watch other people's lives. But they no longer feel the same need to prove their own. This can feel strange to others. People may ask, why don't you post more? Are you okay? Are you hiding something? Are you lonely? Are you insecure? But sometimes the answer is much simpler. They are protecting their peace. They are protecting their energy. They are protecting the parts of their life that feel sacred. And in a culture that pushes people to share everything, privacy can look suspicious. But privacy is not secrecy. Privacy is not shame. Privacy is not isolation. Privacy is the ability to decide what belongs to you and what belongs to the world. And that decision is becoming rare. Because today, many people feel that if something is not posted, it somehow matters less. If the trip was not posted, did it really happen? If the relationship was not displayed, is it really serious? If the success was not announced, is it really important? If the pain was not shared, was it really felt? But this way of thinking is dangerous because it trains us to believe that reality needs an audience to become valid. And it does not. A private life is still a real life. A quiet victory is still a victory. A hidden struggle is still a struggle. A moment that nobody saw can still shape you forever. In fact, Sometimes the most important moments of your life will never be posted anywhere. The conversation that changed how you see yourself. The night you cried and decided not to give up. The mistake that humbled you. The silence that healed you. The small decision that slowly changed your future. No likes, no comments, no proof, just life. And maybe that is what people who do not post remind us. They remind us that not everything meaningful needs to be public. They remind us that identity is not built only through attention. They remind us that you can exist fully, even when nobody is watching. There's a certain freedom in that. The freedom to enjoy something without documenting it. The freedom to be happy without proving it. The freedom to be sad without explaining it. The freedom to change without announcing it. The freedom to be a person, not a brand. Because that is another hidden pressure of social media. It slowly turns people into personal brands. You begin to think about your image, your message, your aesthetic, your consistency, your public identity. And even if you are not famous, you may start managing yourself like a product. But human beings are not products. We are contradictory. We are messy. We are private. We are emotional. We are unfinished. And people who rarely post may be resisting the pressure to package themselves into something simple and attractive. They may be saying quietly, I am more than what I can show. And that is deeply important, because when you stop performing, you make space for presence. Real presence. The kind of presence where you can sit in a room and not feel the need to reach for your phone. The kind where you can enjoy a conversation without turning it into a story. The kind where you can feel something deeply without needing to translate it into a caption. And presence is one of the rarest things today. Attention is everywhere, but presence is disappearing. People are physically in places, but mentally preparing content. They are at dinner, but checking reactions. They are with friends, but comparing lives. They are living moments, but already thinking about how those moments will appear online. And the person who does not post may be choosing something different. They may be choosing to be fully inside their own life, not outside of it, watching themselves as an image. This is why their silence can feel powerful, because it is not just the absence of posting. It is the refusal to turn every experience into evidence. It is the refusal to reduce life to proof. But of course, there is balance. Posting is not always bad. Sharing can be beautiful. Social media can connect people, inspire people, teach people, and help people feel less alone. The problem is not posting. The problem is needing to post in order to feel real. The problem is when your peace depends on reaction. The problem is when your self-worth rises and falls with attention. The problem is when you stop asking, do I like my life? And start asking, will other people like the way my life looks? That is where the danger begins. And the people who do not post often reveal that danger by contrast. Their silence becomes a mirror. It makes us wonder why we feel such a strong need to show everything. Why do we feel uncomfortable enjoying something privately? Why do we feel forgotten when we are not seen? Why do we feel pressure to prove that we are happy, successful, attractive, loved, or interesting? Maybe the answer is that modern life has made attention feel like oxygen. But it is not. You can breathe without being watched. You can grow without being noticed. You can matter without being displayed. And maybe the quiet people online have already discovered this. Maybe they are not behind. Maybe they are not missing out. Maybe they're simply living at a different rhythm. A rhythm that does not depend on algorithms. A rhythm that does not ask for applause. A rhythm that allows them to keep some parts of life pure. And there's something beautiful about that. Because the world is loud. Everyone is announcing. Everyone is reacting. Everyone is showing. Everyone is trying to be remembered. But the quiet person moves differently. They do not need to prove every emotion. They do not need to turn every memory into content. They do not need the world to confirm that their life has value. They know that some things become more beautiful when they are kept private. A love that does not need an audience. A success that does not need applause. A healing process that does not need explanation. A memory that belongs only to the people who lived it. That is not emptiness. That is depth. So the next time you see someone who never posts, Do not immediately assume they are lonely, boring, insecure, or detached. Maybe they are observing. Maybe they are healing. Maybe they are protecting their energy. Maybe they are tired of performing. Maybe they have simply learned that a meaningful life does not always need to be visible. And maybe, in a world obsessed with being seen, their silence is not weakness. Maybe it is wisdom. Because at the end of the day, your life does not become real because people react to it. Your happiness does not become valid because it receives likes. Your pain does not become important because it is witnessed. Your growth does not become powerful because it is announced. You are real before anyone sees you. You matter before anyone approves of you. You exist beyond the screen, beyond the feed, beyond the version of yourself that others can understand. And maybe that is the hidden psychology of people who do not post. They're not always trying to disappear. Sometimes they are trying to return to themselves, to live without performing, to feel without explaining, to grow without proving, to exist without asking permission from the world. And maybe that is something all of us need to remember. Because we were not born to be content. We were not born to be brands. We were not born to constantly prove our worth to invisible audiences. We were born to live fully, quietly, honestly, deeply. And sometimes, the most powerful parts of a person are the ones they never post. If this video made you think about your own relationship with social media, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think people who do not post are hiding, or are they actually more free? And before you go, watch the next video on the screen because it will show you another hidden side of human behavior that most people never notice. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes silence says more than any post ever could.